For 50 years of marriage, Ophelia Xing had given everything to Milo Qin. When he was injured and disabled on a mission, she quit her respectable and stable job as a TV host to stay by his side, massaging his legs every day. When he said he wanted to be childless, she endured 10 miscarriages, leaving her permanently unable to bear children without a single complaint. Everyone said Milo Qin was blessed for 8 lifetimes to have a wife like Ophelia Xing. But it wasn't until Milo Qin passed away peacefully that Ophelia Xing, who had served him her entire life, learned the truth. In his eyes she had never been a blessing, but a burden standing between him and his real wife and son. How is this possible? I'm Milo's wife, why can't I get his death certificate? At the community service center, the gray-haired Ophelia Xing held Milo Qin's ashes, questioning the staff in confusion. Ma'am, death certificates can only be issued to immediate family members. According to our database, you're still listed as unmarried. Ophelia Xing tremblingly put on her reading glasses, staring at the staff's computer screen repeatedly. The staff wasn't lying. After 50 years with Milo Qin, her marital status was still unmarried. Before she could recover from this explosive news, the staff added, "We found that Mr. Milo Qin was married 50 years ago. His wife was Nova Song, and they have a son named Liu Qin. Although Ms. Nova Song has passed away, you can contact Mr. Liu Qin to apply for Mr. Milo Qin's death certificate." The moment she heard the names Nova Song and Liu Qin, Ophelia Xing's ears rang. Hadn't they been Milo Qin's widowed sister-in-law and nephew? When did they become his wife and son? Then what was she? All these years she had waited on Milo Qin hand and foot, taken care of the sick Nova Song. What had she been? A maid? Ophelia Xing stumbled out of the community service center in a daze. On the way she received a call from Liu Qin. "Auntie, Uncle left all his inheritance to me, you won't mind, right? After all, I'm the only blood heir of the Qin family. But he made a will, leaving you a spot in the Qin family ancestral tomb. When the time comes, you can be buried with him. Thank you for taking care of him and my mom all these years." Ophelia Xing couldn't help but laugh. 50 years of devotion, and all she got was the chance to be buried with him after death. Even on his deathbed, Milo Qin had only thought about his son. Had he ever considered how she would survive without a job, without a pension? The last bit of affection Ophelia Xing had for Milo Qin vanished completely. In its place was hatred for being deceived for 50 years. She stared at the urn she had caressed countless times, wanting to smash it to the ground on the spot. But fate was cruel, not even giving her a chance to vent. A runaway truck came crashing. Bang. All Ophelia Xing saw was a blinding red. It seemed like a crowd had gathered around, pointing and whispering. I know this old lady. Her husband just passed away and she has no children. What a tragic fate. Yeah, she has no one left. Going with her husband is probably for the best. Maybe they'll be reunited in the next life. No. Ophelia Xing's soul shook violently. If there really was a next life, she would never, ever have anything to do with Milo Qin again. Comrade Ophelia Xing, have you made up your mind? Are you really going to give up your hard-earned job as a host, your promising future, just to take care of your husband? You're the backbone of our TV station. Besides, you should know we have a spot for overseas training at the provincial station. You'll leave in 7 days. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I've already decided to recommend you. Think carefully. Looking at Director Li from the TV station, who looked distressed, Ophelia Xing took a long time to react. Milo Qin's accident, her resignation, hadn't this happened in 1977? Had she been reborn? Ophelia Xing made up her mind instantly, taking Director Li's hand. "Director, you're right. I shouldn't give up my future. Please pretend I never submitted this resignation letter." Director Li let out a sigh of relief, patting her gently. "I'm glad you've come to your senses. Ophelia, you're about the same age as my daughter, so I'll say this, giving up your career for a man is never a wise choice, no matter when." Ophelia Xing nodded, a touch of bitterness in her heart. It had taken her an entire lifetime to realize this truth in her previous life. Thankfully, in this life she would no longer foolishly waste her love and devotion on the heartless Qin family. But as she glanced at the list, she spotted a familiar name. Director Li noticed, smiling at her. "That G-boy is a big shot now, a top host at CCTV. I remember he was your senior in school, right? Once you're abroad you can look out for each other. Oh, I'll contact him now. On that day you can take the special plane together. Ophelia Xing thought of the gentle and elegant man from her school days, a flicker of anticipation stirring in her heart. She hadn't seen him in ages. When she got home from the TV station and was about to open the door, she suddenly heard Nova Song's soft, sweet voice inside. Milo, you married me to take care of Leo and me back then, hiding the truth from Ophelia by giving her a fake marriage certificate. Now that you're injured, I can't quit my job to take care of you and Leo, so you pretended to be emotionally unstable to hint that she should come back. You've done so much for me, I don't know how to thank you. A man's deep, clear voice replied, but his words cut like a knife into Ophelia Xing's heart. No need for thanks, Nova. We grew up together. Just because you chose my brother over me back then doesn't mean we have no bond. My brother's gone, I'm supposed to take care of you and Leo. The Qin family's property will only go to Leo in the end. As for Ophelia, you know I love her and I do feel sorry for her. But she's a contented person, she won't care about these empty titles. When we die, I'll be buried with her, that'll be my compensation. Nova Song's voice sounded again. But treating her like this, aren't you afraid she'll find out and leave you? Milo Qin let out a low laugh, his tone confident. How could she? She's always been carefree and straightforward. As long as we don't tell her, she'll never know. Besides, even if she does find out, she loves me so much, she won't bear to leave. I give you my companionship and her my love. Isn't that fair? Ophelia Xing's fingers tightened around the doorknob. Milo Qin was too shameless, too arrogant. He actually thought she would endure all the grievances just because she loved him. Unfortunately, she was no longer the Ophelia Xing who had loved him with all her heart in her previous life. Ophelia Xing wiped her tears and pushed the door open. The room fell silent instantly. A handsome man in a military uniform sat in a wheelchair, his lips slightly flushed. What they had been doing was obvious. A flash of panic crossed Milo Qin's eyes, but he quickly masked it with the same irritability he had shown these days. Ophelia, coming back so late, are you trying to starve me? Since his accident, his temperament had become unpredictable, losing all the tenderness he once had. If she hadn't just heard his words to Nova Song, Ophelia would never have known he was faking it. All just to soften her heart, make her quit her job and dedicate herself to taking care of him, like a dutiful maid for the Qin family. Noticing Ophelia's pale face, Nova Song quickly stepped forward to play the peacemaker. That's enough, Milo. Ophelia is going to resign to take care of you, isn't she? She probably got held up on her way home from work. Milo Qin, who had been as cold as ice a moment ago, softened instantly. Sister-in-law, it's fine, I was just scolding her. She's really out of line. You've always had a weak stomach and Leo is so young. How could you make you wait for her to cook? Nova Song patted his wheelchair playfully, pretending to scold him. It's not that serious. Oh no. She let out a cry of surprise. Milo Qin nearly jumped out of his wheelchair in alarm. Sister-in-law, what's wrong? It's nothing, just pricked my hand on a thorn. But Milo Qin was still worried. He grabbed Nova Song's hand and prepared to take her to the room. A woman's hands are precious, how is this nothing? Let's go upstairs to apply medicine. The two acted as if no one else was there, the atmosphere growing increasingly intimate. Ophelia's heart, which she thought had grown numb, twinged with pain. He kept saying a woman's hands were precious, yet she had told him countless times that her hands were sore from chilblains from washing clothes, begging for a jar of cold cream. Milo Qin had bought it only to give it to Nova Song in the end. He had said, her job is special, she needs it more. Back then, Ophelia could never understand why her sister-in-law, a primary school teacher, would need cold cream more than she did, a TV host who needed to be on camera. She had eventually attributed it to Milo's care for his widowed sister-in-law. Now she understood. It wasn't that a woman's hands were precious, it was Nova Song's hands that were precious. He just didn't care about her, he cared more about Nova. Thankfully, in 7 days she would board a plane to the other side of the ocean, leaving behind the Qin family's dirty, tangled mess forever. Ophelia silently cooked dinner. He was a good cook. When Leo Qin smelled the food, he ran out of his room. Seeing Ophelia carrying a bowl of steaming seafood porridge, a malicious smile spread across his little face. He stuck out his leg. Ophelia stumbled, spilling the porridge all over herself. The scalding liquid made her cry out in pain. But her scream was drowned out by Leo's wails the next second. "Auntie, I know you don't like me, but how could you intentionally scald me?" "Wah, Mom, it hurts so much." Hearing the cries, Nova Song and Milo Chin rushed over. Nova hugged Leo tightly, her eyes red with sympathy. "Ophelia, if you're upset about resigning and have issues with me, take it out on me, don't bully our Leo." Ophelia was about to explain, but Milo Chin pushed her roughly aside. She stumbled backward, her waist hitting a cabinet. The pain was so intense she could barely stand. Milo Chin acted as if he didn't see her suffering, his voice filled with disgust. "Ophelia Sheng. Leo is just a child, he's my brother's only son. How could you be so vicious?" Ophelia looked up, glancing at the tiny red mark on Leo's arm, no bigger than a fingernail, then at the blisters covering her own arms. The irony was bitter. For such a small wound, he had accused her of something so terrible. Yet even that tiny wound had made Milo Chin frantic with worry, and he insisted on taking Leo to the hospital. Before leaving, Leo, sitting in Milo's arms, stuck his tongue out at Ophelia. Watching his grinning face, Ophelia suddenly remembered the time he had a high fever. Nova had been nowhere to be found and Milo was on a military mission. When Ophelia got home from work, Leo was delirious with fever. The buses had stopped running and there were no taxis to the hospital. She had stumbled along, carrying Leo on her back the entire way, then stayed with him at the hospital for 2 days while he received 4 fluids. She had truly cared for Leo like her own child. In her previous life, having no children of her own, she had done everything to support Leo. She had never spent the inheritance left by her parents, using it instead to buy Leo a car and a house. But what had she gotten in return? That arrogant phone call before her death, and the malicious provocation from the child in front of her. Ophelia felt a deep sense of regret from the bottom of her heart. Sincerity couldn't buy sincerity. Leo had grown twisted at such a young age, and she would no longer foolishly give her all. She turned and went back to her room to treat her wounds alone. The blisters on her arms were terrifyingly large. She bit her lip, pricked them with a needle heated over a flame and sprinkled on some medicinal powder, but the pain was still unbearable. To distract herself, Ophelia began packing her luggage. After busying herself for a long time, she only managed to fill a small bag. It was ridiculous, after all these years with Milo Chin, she owned nothing but a few pieces of clothing and shoes. Her only jewelry was what her late parents had left her. The Chin family was well off. Milo's parents were retired PLA soldiers, and Milo himself had been a regiment commander in the army, earning a monthly allowance of several hundred yuan. But when she thought about it, she had never taken a single cent from Milo Chin all these years. She had even used her own salary to support the family, never daring to spend money on herself. Yet Nova, a primary school teacher earning only a few dozen yuan a month, had no shortage of gold necklaces and bracelets. Ophelia once again realized Milo's favoritism, a sharp little thorn piercing her heart. She continued packing and finally at the bottom of a drawer she found the 2 marriage certificates she had carefully kept all these years. She still remembered the day Milo had brought them home, his face full of remorse. "My brother just passed away, we can't have a big wedding, Ophelia. I'm sorry to wrong you. From now on, you're the mistress of the Chin family and I'll treat you well." Now she wondered, had he really been sorry about the small wedding? Both of his short sentences had been lies. They had deceived her for a lifetime, causing her unimaginable pain. Fighting back tears, Ophelia tore the 2 fake certificates to shreds, treating them like worthless paper. When Milo returned home with Nova and Leo from the hospital, Ophelia was already in bed. But due to the severe pain in her hands, she couldn't sleep soundly. As soon as Milo pushed the door open, she woke up. Hearing the sound of his wheelchair approaching, Ophelia's heart was in turmoil. She felt a strong sense of resistance toward Milo now. The thought of sharing a bed with him made her feel nauseous. Fortunately, Milo Chin stopped, because Nova Song called him softly at the door. "Milo, Leo seems to be having a nightmare." With just that sentence, Milo Chin turned and left without hesitation. The room fell quiet again, but after a while strange sounds drifted over from the next room. Ophelia didn't want to listen, but the night was too silent, and her hearing was unusually sharp. She could clearly hear the woman's intermittent moans and the man's heavy gasps. "Milo, be gentle, aren't you afraid Ophelia will hear us?" Then keep your voice down, sister-in-law. Isn't it more exciting knowing Ophelia's next door? You rascal. Don't call me sister-in-law at a time like this. Husband. Want me to call you wife? You're such a tease. Can you blame me? You said Ophelia is so stiff in bed like a dead fish. Why don't you like me like this? I love it, of course I do. I love my wife the most. Their explicit words kept drilling into Ophelia's ears. She never imagined that she, separated by just a wall, would become a tool for their foreplay, and from their conversation, it was clearly not the first time. Ophelia thought back to how Milo had repeatedly insisted he only cared for Nova as a sister-in-law. The absurdity made her laugh bitterly. Caring for his widowed sister-in-law. In bed. He really wasn't afraid his brother's ghost would come for him. She wondered how many nights they had used Leo as an excuse to fool around. Suddenly, Ophelia felt a surge of nausea. She struggled to get up and rushed to the bathroom to vomit. Hearing the noise, Milo quickly emerged from Nova's room. Desire still lingered in his eyes, but his tone was concerned. Ophelia, are you okay? Did you skip dinner and get an upset stomach? He stepped forward and patted her back gently, as if he hadn't slapped her for Leo, as if he hadn't been making love to Nova next door just moments ago. This was always Milo Chin. A slap followed by a sugar-coated date. Making her sad, then making her think he still loved her. But now she only felt disgusted, so much so that she thought she'd vomit up her bile. Her stomach was empty and her lower abdomen ached for no reason. Ophelia tried to stand up to steady herself to get away from Milo, but as soon as she rose, her vision went black. Before losing consciousness, she only heard Milo calling her name anxiously, "Ophelia, wake up." When she opened her eyes again, Ophelia was in the hospital. She smelled the familiar scent of disinfectant. Before she could fully open her eyes, she heard Nova's voice, deliberately lowered. "Milo, even though Leo cried several times when he found out she's pregnant, it's still your biological child. You don't have to always put us first." She wielded this tactic of pretending to yield perfectly. Milo's tone was firm. "No, this child can't be born. I'll lie to Ophelia and say the baby has birth defects, then convince her to abort it. Leo is insecure, I can't make him sad." He comforted Nova for a few more words, then turned around and locked eyes with Ophelia. A flash of panic crossed Milo's face. "Ophelia. You're awake? When did you wake up? Why didn't you say something?" Ophelia spoke, her voice hoarse. "Just now. Did you hear what the doctor said?" Milo's probing made Ophelia sneer. "No. Weren't you alone just now?" Hearing her words, Milo let out a sigh of relief, then hesitated before speaking. "Ophelia, you're pregnant 2 months along. But the doctor told me the baby might not be developing properly. They recommend aborting it. Do you agree?" Milo felt a twinge of guilt. He knew Ophelia had longed for a child of their own for years. But for Leo's sake he had no choice. He had even prepared a fake medical report, expecting Ophelia to be reluctant to give up the baby. To his surprise, before he could pull it out, Ophelia whispered softly, "Okay." Milo could barely believe his ears. "What did you say?" Ophelia repeated calmly, "I said okay. Let's abort the baby. A child born into such a loveless family would be unfortunate." Milo didn't want her to have a child that might compete with Leo for the Chin family's inheritance, and she didn't want her child to fight for a father's love that was never truly his. A child deserved to have it all. If it couldn't, then it was better not to be born at all. Milo looked at the decisive Ophelia, a strange tightness in his chest. Somehow he felt she had changed, but he couldn't put his finger on how. He told himself it was just his imagination. He should be happy that she was being so obedient. Ophelia underwent the abortion. It was the first time in this life, but the 11th time across 2 lifetimes. As she felt the warm flow between her legs, Ophelia couldn't help but redden with tears. Milo held her hand and comforted her. "Don't be sad, Ophelia. We'll have another child someday." But both of them knew it was a lie. There would be no other child. Never again. Ophelia didn't respond, and Milo didn't know what else to say. The atmosphere between them was awkward. But upon reflection, it was a rare moment of peace. Since Nova and Leo had moved into their small courtyard, Ophelia had become petty and unreasonable, at least in Milo's eyes. Now looking at the pale Ophelia, Milo felt a rare surge of tenderness. He was about to say something to tell her he'd treat her well, to ask her not to overthink when the hospital room door opened again. Nova walked in with a lunchbox, smiling brightly. "Ophelia, you've been through so much. I went to the state-run restaurant and bought some food to help you recover." She opened the tin lunchbox, revealing glistening braised pork knuckles and even a plate of shrimp. Ophelia felt nauseous just looking at it. But Milo let out a sigh of relief, taking the lunchbox and placing it in front of her without hesitation. "Sister-in-law, these dishes are hard to come by. Even after how Ophelia acted before, you still thought of her. You're so kind-hearted." He winked at Ophelia. Ophelia pretended not to see it. She knew exactly what Milo meant. Nova was offering her an olive branch and he wanted her to apologize to Nova. But why should she? She had done nothing wrong. It was them who had done the dirty deeds. Ophelia stayed silent, but Nova took the opportunity to press on. "Yes, I waited in line for ages, my legs cramped." As she spoke, she casually lifted the hem of her dress. Milo's gaze fell on Nova's smooth calves under the dress, his eyes darkening. "Ophelia, eat first. I'll take sister-in-law to see a Chinese doctor for her legs. After all, she cramped because of you." Ophelia looked at him. After more than 50 years together across 2 lifetimes, she knew exactly what state Milo was in. He was aroused. Aroused by Nova, while his wife lay in the hospital recovering from an abortion. But she only spoke calmly. "Okay. Go ahead." The same pattern repeated over the next 2 days. Nova would come with meals, complaining of aches and pains, first her head, then her legs, and Milo would immediately take her out to get a massage. None of the food Nova brought agreed with Ophelia's stomach, but Milo didn't care in the slightest. After 3 days in the hospital, Ophelia had lost a noticeable amount of weight. Even the nurses looked at her with sympathy. But Ophelia only smiled faintly, feeling no sorrow at all. Perhaps she had grown desensitized. Now, even witnessing Milo and Nova together didn't stir a single ripple in her heart. Yet she never imagined that even after trying this much, only wanting to leave quietly in a few days, someone still saw her as a thorn in their side. When she returned home from the hospital, she noticed her packed bag had been rummaged through. A bad feeling settled in Ophelia's chest. She checked it urgently and discovered the jade bracelet hidden at the bottom was gone. Her parents had been deeply in love. Her father had died a hero for his country when she was young, and her mother had remained widowed for most of her life. This jade bracelet had been her father's engagement gift to her mother, the only memento her mother had cherished. On her deathbed, her mother had given the bracelet to Milo, asking him to put it on Ophelia himself and swear to love her forever. Milo had vowed immediately, "If I ever treat Ophelia badly, may I be betrayed by everyone and lose everything I hold dear." Ophelia had quickly covered his mouth, tears in her eyes. Back then she had truly believed him. It wasn't until she learned he had been lying to her all along that she had taken the bracelet off. But now where was it? Ophelia searched frantically, turning the house upside down. Her heart skipped a beat when she spotted Leo playing with friends in the courtyard. Dangling casually from his hand was her jade bracelet. Ophelia's heart raced. "Leo-chin, give me back that bracelet." Leo turned around and stuck his tongue out at her. "My mom doesn't even have a bracelet like this. Why should I give it to you? I'd rather smash it than let you wear it. Naya." He threw the bracelet to the ground. Crack. The jade shattered into pieces. Still unsatisfied, Leo stamped his foot on the shards. Stupid bracelet. Stupid bracelet. There, here you go. Pick it up yourself." The last thread of Ophelia's sanity snapped. She rushed forward and slapped Leo hard across his triumphant face. Leo fell to the ground, bursting into loud tears. "Bad lady. He hit me. I'm going to tell Daddy to kick you out." "Ophelia Shing. Are you bullying Leo again?" Ophelia had just picked up the broken bracelet and stood up when Milo, furious, slapped her so hard she fell to the ground. The sharp jade shards pierced her palm, soaking it in blood. Milo didn't even glance at her. He rolled his wheelchair to Leo, lifting him into his arms and comforting him gently. "Leo, it's your auntie's fault. I'll make her apologize to you." Of course Ophelia refused. "He broke my bracelet first. Don't you know that bracelet was my mother's?" Milo cut her off impatiently. "Your mother is dead. It's just a stupid bracelet, we can buy another one." Ophelia stumbled back, her body swaying unsteadily. Milo realized he'd gone too far, a flash of guilt crossing his eyes. But that guilt vanished completely when he saw Nova's tears. "Milo, I think Leo and I should move out," Nova said, her voice trembling with suppressed sadness. "I can take care of him alone. I don't want to come between you two." Watching Nova, who seemed so wronged yet still thoughtful of them, and then looking at Ophelia, who remained unyielding, Milo quickly made his choice. Disappointment filled his face. "Ophelia Shing, I'll ask you one last time, are you going to apologize to Leo? I did nothing wrong. Why should I apologize?" "Fine. Fine." Milo laughed angrily, immediately calling one of his subordinates from the army. "I suspect Ophelia Shing is colluding with foreign forces and leaking state secrets. Bring her back for interrogation." The evidence he presented was the foreign language letter from the overseas mentor Director Lee had arranged for her. Ophelia felt as if she'd been plunged into ice water, cold from head to toe. Times had changed and society was more open than before. But being accused of colluding with foreign forces meant she would inevitably face harsh interrogation. Milo had served in the army for years. He had told her stories of the horrors faced by those under interrogation, beatings, torture, endless questioning. Yet now, to defend Leo and Nova, he was sending her there himself. As she was led away in custody, Milo approached her and whispered, "You thought you could play hard to get with a fake study abroad letter and make me kick out my sister-in-law and Leo? This will teach you a lesson. Stop plotting stupid schemes." If he had looked down, he would have seen the last flicker of hope in Ophelia's eyes die out as he spoke. But he didn't. He had abandoned her countless times before. Why would he care about this one? Ophelia didn't resist, she couldn't. She was thrown into a dark, cold interrogation room. The frigid air sent shivers down her spine. The interrogator was none other than Milo's subordinate. His eyes were filled with contempt as he grabbed a whip and lashed out at her without hesitation. Crack, crack. The whip, soaked in salt water, left deep, bleeding welts across her body. Ophelia couldn't help but scream in agony, her voice cold with accusation. "Is this a legal interrogation method? This is nothing but brutality." Her screams and protests didn't arouse an ounce of mercy in the man. Instead, they made him whip her harder. "Colonel Chin is a man of integrity. He's confined to a wheelchair for his country. Yet you collude with foreign forces. You're a disgrace to him. Colonel Chin specifically ordered me to teach you a lesson. He'll take responsibility for whatever happens. Ophelia Shing, I advise you to confess. What does this letter say? Did he love them that much? Did Milo love Nova and Leo so deeply that he would let her suffer like this for them?" The pain made her dizzy. Just as she was about to speak, the man sneered, "Save your lies. Beat her first, drag her away and beat her hard." He waved his hand and two men immediately dragged Ophelia away. The nightmare lasted 4 days. She lost count of how many times the whip struck her. Her fingers were crushed black and blue in a vice. Every time she lost consciousness, a bucket of salt water would be dumped on her to wake her up. There wasn't an inch of unbroken skin on her body. Every part of her ached horribly. Ophelia thought she would die there. Until the interrogation room door opened, and Nova pushed Milo in his wheelchair into her sight. Milo looked down at her, bound and bloodied, a flicker of compassion crossing his eyes. "Ophelia, 4 days have passed. Do you know you're wrong? My sister-in-law is kind-hearted. She doesn't hold a grudge against you for pushing her and Leo away. Just apologize sincerely and I'll take you home." Ophelia's heart had long since died, but his words made her laugh bitterly. "Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for resenting Nova and Leo. I'm sorry for getting in the way of your devotion to them. And I'm sorry for ever existing in the Chin family and disturbing your little family of 3. Is that enough?" Milo looked at her red, tear-filled eyes, a sudden panic rising in his chest. "Ophelia, that's not what I meant. My sister-in-law and I are innocent. I only promised my brother I'd take care of them. You know that, don't you? Why can't you understand me?" Nova added fuel to the fire. "See? Ophelia still misunderstands our relationship, Milo. Leo and I should stop appearing in your lives from now on." Milo refused without hesitation. "Joe, this is the 2nd time you've said this, sister-in-law. I don't want to hear it again. If you and Leo leave, how can I face my brother?" Milo looked at Ophelia with utter disappointment. Ophelia, you're truly unreasonable. Stay here and reflect on your mistakes. He wheeled himself away angrily. Nova didn't rush to follow. She walked up to Ophelia, lifting her chin casually. Did you see that? With just a little effort, Milo won't listen to a word you say. As she spoke, she patted her own lower abdomen, her expression provocative and triumphant. You didn't know this, did you, Ophelia? I'm pregnant with Milo's child. Ophelia looked up sharply, forcing words out through gritted teeth. How far along are you? Nova smiled. 3 months. 3 months, 1 month further along than the child Ophelia had lost. Ophelia remembered that Milo had claimed to be on a military mission back then. It seemed he had taken Nova in and cared for her personally. How shameless could he be to insist he and Nova were innocent, while accusing her of being paranoid? Ophelia felt another surge of nausea. She fought back the urge to retch, refusing to show weakness in front of Nova. But Nova would never let her off easily. She clapped her hands, summoning several thug-like men. You all know Ms. Xing, our famous host. Now she's a criminal colluding with foreign forces. Have your fun with her, just don't kill her. Milo's subordinate hesitated, thinking it went too far. But Nova's next sentence stopped him in his tracks. She smiled. This is all Milo's idea. He wants to discipline her so she'll never dare betray the country again. Ophelia shouted angrily. I'm innocent. You're framing me, I never did any of those things. Call Milo here. I want to confront him face to face. It's no use being stubborn, Ophelia. Milo won't help you. He's already promised to take Leo and me to a tropical island. As for you, enjoy your stay here. Nova's voice was vicious as she slammed the interrogation room door shut. The sleazy men closed in on Ophelia, their unpleasant stench overwhelming her. Rough hands groped her thighs, arms, and even more intimate areas. Ophelia closed her eyes, tears of despair sliding down her cheeks. She regretted it, she truly regretted it. Why had she been blinded by Milo's lies? Why had she stayed with someone like him? After being reborn, she should have fled the Qin family's mess earlier. She wouldn't be in this hellish situation now. Ophelia bit down hard on her tongue. If she was going to be humiliated like this, she'd rather die. The taste of blood filled her mouth, but in the next instant the interrogation room door was kicked open with a crash. Director Li rushed in, her eyes reddening at the sight of Ophelia's miserable state. Ophelia Xing is the backbone of our provincial TV station. How dare you torture her without evidence? The interrogator looked defensive. Colonel Qin said she's a spy. He even provided her foreign letters as proof. How could it be fake? Director Li almost laughed in anger, slamming official documents onto the man's chest. That's a letter from her state-sponsored study abroad mentor. Do you mean to tell me you didn't bother translating it before arresting her? This is nothing but personal revenge. Mark my words, I'll appeal this. She helped the half-conscious Ophelia leave and no one dared stop her. Ophelia's breath was faint but her voice was surprisingly firm. Director Li, please take me to the airport immediately. But what about your injuries and luggage? Ophelia looked at her own ragged, bloodied form and smiled bitterly. It doesn't matter. I just want to leave here as soon as possible. Wounds could be treated and things could be replaced. Her mother's heirloom was already shattered. She had nothing left to cherish. Director Li couldn't persuade her, so she personally escorted her to the special plane. Before boarding, she looked at Ophelia, pale, bloodless and hollow, and sighed. The bright, promising young host she had mentored had withered away like a rose after just a few years with Milo Qin. Ophelia, do you want me to handle the divorce proceedings for you? Ophelia shook her head, then spoke slowly under Director Li's exasperated gaze. We were never married. There's no need for a divorce. Milo Qin and I, we have nothing to do with each other. Those few short sentences carried the weight of more than 50 years of sorrow across 2 lifetimes. She waved goodbye to Director Li, burying the shattered jade bracelet fragments in her hometown's soil. From now on the sky was wide and the road was long. Milo Qin, we shall never meet again. At the train station, Milo felt an inexplicable panic as soon as he boarded. Nova noticed his pale face and handed him a glass of warm water thoughtfully. Milo, what's wrong? Is it too crowded? Are you feeling unwell? Milo took the glass and took a sip. Probably. He shook his head, trying to shake off the strange feeling. An elderly woman sitting next to them smiled and sighed. Oh, what a loving couple you are. Your child is so big and you still use matching cups when traveling together. Nova's face turned red with shyness. Leo, however, looked proud, taking Nova's hand in one of his and Milo's in the other. Of course. My mom and dad love each other very much. Milo didn't deny it, but he fell into a daze, staring at the cup in Nova's hand, the exact same one as his own. He was picky about cups. Most made the water taste strange to him. The cup in his hand had been bought by Ophelia at great cost, sent specially from Shanghai. There were only 2 of them. Milo still remembered how excited Ophelia had been when she gave him the cup. She had smiled brightly like a little sun. Milo Chin, from now on we'll use matching cups and live happily ever after. But the cup that should have belonged to Ophelia was now in Nova's hands. He had given it to her. Over the years he had given most of the best things in the house to Nova and Leo. Perhaps that was why Ophelia had been so jealous, throwing tantrums again and again. Milo made up his mind. When they got back he'd be nicer to Ophelia. Even though she was moody lately, even going so far as to bully Nova and Leo, a helpless widow and her child, she was still his wife, the one who was supposed to spend her life with him. Besides, Ophelia loved him so much. If he treated her better, she'd surely understand why he needed to care for Nova and Leo. As long as she never found out about the fake marriage certificate, and never learned he'd slept with Nova. Milo told himself he was overthinking. Ophelia had always been carefree and uncomplicated. She'd never find out. As for framing her and throwing her in the interrogation room, he'd bring her some gifts from Haiching when he got back, sweet-talk her a little, and she'd probably forgive him soon enough. After all, Ophelia had always been easy to appease. Noticing Milo was distracted, Nova gently patted Leo's shoulder. Leo nodded, immediately clinging to Milo and begging for a story. Milo pushed aside his thoughts, focusing on entertaining the boy. He spent 7 days playing wildly with Leo on the tropical island. Before leaving, Milo stopped at a department store and bought an exquisite pearl necklace. Nova's eyes lit up the moment she saw it. Milo, this necklace is beautiful. You have such great taste. She reached out to take it from him, but to her surprise, Milo frowned and tucked the necklace away. This is for Ophelia and Nova. I've already given you plenty of jewelry. Seeing the necklace in the store had reminded him of something. Ophelia had a swan-like neck, slender and elegant. Yet after all these years he'd never given her a single decent piece of jewelry. Her neck was always bare. She'd surely be happy with this, right? Milo ran his fingers over the creamy pearls, imagining Ophelia's joy when she put it on. An unfamiliar sense of anticipation stirred in him. He rushed home almost eagerly, his wheelchair wheels spinning so fast that Nova and Leo could barely keep up. But when he pushed open the door, Milo froze. A thin layer of dust covered the tables. The bowls and chopsticks they'd used before leaving were still in the sink, moldy and unwashed. The house looked like no one had been home for ages. He thought back to the look in Ophelia's eyes in the interrogation room, empty, no sorrow, no anger, and his heart felt as if it were being squeezed by a giant hand. Was she angry? She was an orphan with no family. If she wasn't home, where else could she be? The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became. He was about to go out to look for her when Nova, breathless from rushing, stopped him. She glanced around the messy house and immediately realized Ophelia hadn't returned. Milo, I asked the neighbor auntie just now. She said Ophelia came back a few days ago and left a message. She said. Nova looked like she struggled to say the words. Milo pressed urgently, what did she say? Nova forced a bitter smile. She said if Leo and I don't move out, she'll never come back. Milo, if we're the reason you two split up, it'll be our fault. I'm sorry, Milo. If I'd known she'd get this angry, I never would have suggested scaring her into behaving. Leo burst into tears too. Mom, is Auntie still trying to kick us out? The mother and son hugged each other, looking like poor victims being bullied. Rage flared in Milo's chest. Staring at the pearl necklace in his hand, he felt like a fool. He'd actually wanted to apologize and make it up to Ophelia, but she was being so unreasonable. Why couldn't she understand him just a little? Milo clenched his fist, snapping the pearl necklace. Round pearls scattered across the floor. He stared at them for a long time, his tone cold as before. It was just a trick to scare her, and Ophelia's being so melodramatic. Nova, you two stay. I'd never kick you out for a woman like her. She thinks she can threaten me? She's just a useless freeloader with no family, no job. Who else would want her without the Chin family, without me? Milo spoke harshly, but his heart felt like a hollowed-out hole. Over the next few days he waited for Ophelia to come home and apologize. But days passed, his legs ached from lack of massages, and Ophelia still didn't appear. Milo rubbed his knees, a flash of pain in his eyes. She'd never let him suffer like this before. No matter how late she got home from the TV station, she'd boil hot water, apply a warm towel to his legs and massage them thoroughly. But now she was throwing a tantrum over Nova and refusing to come home? As he thought about it, he heard a noise from the bedroom door. Milo excitedly rolled out of bed, hurrying to open it. "Ophelia, I knew you'd come back." His words trailed off. Standing at the door wasn't Ophelia, the woman he'd been secretly longing for. It was Nova, dressed in skimpy silk pajamas. The sheer fabric clung to her figure. In the past, this sight would have ignited desire in Milo, but now he felt nothing. He stared dumbly at her slightly swollen belly, asking in disbelief, "You're pregnant? How can you be pregnant? I used protection every time." Nova shyly covered her belly. "It happened when I went to see you during your last mission." "Milo, what should we name our baby?" Milo's face showed no joy. He grabbed Nova's arm and pulled her toward the door. Nova stumbled, looking wronged. "It's so late, where are you taking me?" Milo's tone was firm. "To get an abortion. This baby can't be born." Nova was stunned. "Why not? Leo said he wants a little brother or sister." Milo looked at her as if he were seeing her for the first time, his brows furrowed tightly. "Earlier, I made Ophelia abort her baby for Leo's sake. Now that you're pregnant, how do you think Ophelia will feel? She's my wife in name. I can't let her find out about this. What if she leaves me when she finds out? I just want to take a little extra care of you two, spend more time with you. I never wanted to split up with Ophelia. Listen to me, get rid of the baby and things can go back to how they were. Isn't that better?" Milo grew more and more agitated as he spoke. Nova laughed angrily. "You think Ophelia doesn't know? She's known everything all along." The color drained from Milo's face. He grabbed Nova's neck with both hands, his fingers tightening. "What did you say? Say it again." Nova struggled to breathe, nearly choking to death. After a desperate fight, she finally broke free. She rubbed her neck, coughing, and met Milo's bloodshot eyes, then suddenly smiled. "I said she's known everything. Did you really think she'd be a fool forever? There were so many people in the hospital. You held me, touched me, nurses saw us countless times. Not to mention those nights. If she'd ever stayed awake, she would have heard us clearly. Milo Chin, did you really think you could hide this forever?" Milo trembled violently. Guilt, shame, and panic surged through him all at once. He couldn't bear to imagine how desperate and heartbroken Ophelia must have been when she found out the truth. But he could explain. He'd always loved only her, he could make her understand. With that thought, Milo abandoned everything, immediately wheeling his chair toward the door to find Ophelia. But once he was outside, he froze again. Ophelia's parents were long dead. Since marrying him, she'd been torn between work and home, barely having time to make friends. Where could she have gone? Overwhelmed with regret and self-loathing, Milo slapped himself twice. Why had he been so proud? Why hadn't he swallowed his pride and apologized sooner? The thought of Ophelia possibly being homeless these days made his heart ache fiercely. After thinking for a long time, he managed to track down Director Lee's contact information. In the middle of the night, he showed up unannounced at her doorstep. Director Lee was startled when she opened the door. When she recognized who it was, her expression turned icy. "Isn't this Colonel Chin? What brings such an important person to my humble doorstep?" Milo didn't care about her sarcasm. Instead, his eyes reddened as he begged humbly, "Director Lee, where is Ophelia? Please tell her I know I was wrong. Ask her to come back. We can start over, can't we?" Director Lee's sleepiness vanished instantly. "Ask Ophelia to come back?" Milo Chin, where were these thoughts when you made her quit her job for another woman? When you forced her to abort your child? When you let your precious nephew smash her mother's heirloom? When you framed her for colluding with foreign forces and had her tortured for 3 days and nights? Director Lee's voice rose with anger. Thinking of Ophelia's half-dead state when she rescued her, pale, broken, as if she might collapse at any moment, she wanted to skin Milo alive. It was only because Ophelia had begged to cut ties with him, and because Milo had such a sterling public reputation, that Director Lee hadn't acted against him. Otherwise she would have made him pay dearly long ago. Milo's face turned even paler. With every word Director Lee spoke he became more acutely aware of how deeply he had hurt Ophelia. But he forced himself to stay calm. I can explain everything. If Ophelia minds me caring for my sister-in-law and nephew, I'll keep my distance from Nova and Leo from now on. As for the interrogation, I only told them to scare her, not to actually hurt her. Director Lee laughed angrily. Didn't hurt her? She was so weak she could barely stand. Are you blind? Oh, and the men who interrogated her? I reported them and they're in custody. Go ask them yourself. The memory of Ophelia's deathly pale face sent a chill down Milo's spine. He rushed to the military base immediately. His old superior was still up, exhausted from cleaning up Milo's mess. As soon as he saw Milo, the superior who had always admired him, slammed a teacup at his feet. Milo Chin, do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused? How many messes I've had to clean up for you? Comrade Ophelia Xing is innocent. Why did you frame her? You had her nearly beaten to death and even hired thugs to humiliate her. Do you think this military base is a playground for your petty revenge? Milo's heart skipped a beat, a terrible premonition washing over him. Nearly beaten to death? Humiliated? He'd only ordered them to scare her. He grabbed his superior's sleeve. Sir, what's going on? I only wanted to teach her a lesson to scare her. Is she okay? The superior hit his hand angrily. Half dead and you call that okay? Lucky for you, Li Guixia arrived just in time to stop those thugs from violating her. Otherwise, not even 10 of me could save you. Milo Chin, even if you had a falling out with her, you didn't have to let your wife hire thugs to do such terrible things to her. But Nova had told him she'd only help discipline Ophelia. Milo had agreed because he thought Ophelia was too stubborn and needed to learn her place. How had it escalated to this? Milo covered his face, murmuring dazedly, Ophelia Xing is my wife. She's supposed to be my wife. Now it was the superior's turn to look shocked. Stop talking nonsense. The thugs confessed your wife gave them orders, using your marriage certificate as proof. Li Guixia also confirmed that Ophelia was tormented by the two of you. Go apologize to her immediately. Milo didn't hear another word his superior said. His mind went blank with panic. If Director Lee knew the truth, Ophelia must know the marriage certificate was fake too. Her refusal to come home, did it mean she'd given up on him completely? Desperate, Milo banged on Director Lee's door again. When it opened, a bucket of filthy, stinking water was poured over him. The stench made him gag. Director Lee stood holding the bucket, staring at the soaking wet, disheveled Milo with contempt. Milo wiped the filth from his face, no longer daring to complain. He struggled out of his wheelchair and knelt before her. Director Lee, I was blinded by foolishness. Please tell me where Ophelia is. I'll atone for my sins, I promise. Director Lee sneered. Ophelia's gone. She left for overseas the same day you three went to the island. You're a military officer, don't even think about going after her. Oh, and by the way, you two were never legally married. Even if you filed a report to find her, headquarters would never approve it. Thank goodness for that fake marriage certificate you gave her. Otherwise, she'd still be stuck with a scumbag like you. It all made sense now. The English letter he'd used as evidence was actually her study abroad acceptance letter. Ophelia had known the truth all along and she'd been planning to leave him. Milo collapsed to the ground. Once a proud man, he now looked like a homeless beggar, laughing and crying in despair. He'd truly lost her. Milo stumbled back home only to find Nova burning something in the courtyard. As he stared in horror, he realized it was Ophelia's leftover clothes and luggage, the things she hadn't had time to take with her. Milo's eyes widened. He reached into the fire to grab them, but the flames were too intense. All he managed to save were a few tattered cloth scraps. He stared at the charred fabric in his hands, memories of Ophelia wearing those clothes flooding his mind. Milo, dinner's ready. Remember to eat on time. Milo, is this massage pressure okay? Do you feel better? Milo, work was so tiring today. Can I make you something simple for dinner? Ophelia had fluttered around him like a butterfly. Back then he hadn't cherished her. Now that she was gone, his heart felt like it had a gaping hole, one that could never be filled. Like a madman, he tried to smell her scent on the cloth scraps. But all he could detect was the stench of burnt fabric. Seeing the burns on his hands, Nova let out a fake gasp of concern. Milo, these rags are useless, why risk burning yourself for them? I'll get you some burn cream. She reached out to apply the ointment, but Milo pulled back as if struck by lightning. Milo. Nova looked confused. Had she imagined it, or did she see hatred in his eyes? In the next second, Milo slapped her hard, sending her crashing to the ground. Nova song. I only cared for you out of respect for my brother. Who gave you the right to hurt Ophelia? Nova panicked, but she refused to admit her crimes. What are you talking about, Milo? I don't understand. Did someone turn you against me? If Ophelia minds me, I can leave. Watching her use the same old lies to slander Ophelia, Milo suddenly laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Tears streamed down his face as he covered it with his hands. How could he have been so stupid? How had he let Nova deceive him time and time again? How desperate Ophelia must have felt when he'd refused to believe her. Nova was terrified by his reaction, a sense of dread creeping over her. Milo. She tried to hug him, but he pushed her away roughly. It hurts. It hurts so much. My stomach. Milo, our baby. Nova clutched her abdomen, her face contorted in pain. But the man who had once doted on her stared down at her coldly, without a hint of concern. Nova song, you're just my sister-in-law. This child is a bastard, he never should have been born. Nova's face turned ashen with terror. Why, you're just going to watch me miscarry? Milo, what's wrong with you? What did Ophelia do to you? Mentioning Ophelia only drove Milo more insane. He grabbed and smashed everything in sight. In the silent night, only his desperate shouts and the sound of shattering objects echoed. Ophelia's gone. You drove her away. Are you happy now? I've cared for you and Leo so much, why did you have to hurt my Ophelia? Nova song, you deserve to die. When Nova heard Ophelia had left, a flash of joy crossed her eyes. Ignoring her pain, she stumbled and crawled to Milo's feet. Milo, Ophelia's gone, but you still have us. You have me, Leo, and our baby. We were always meant to be a family, weren't we? She was just a maid, good riddance. Milo grabbed her hair fiercely. A family? Who said we're a family? If you hadn't clung to Leo and played the victim, would I have been foolish enough to marry you? You and your son ruined everything. You made me lose Ophelia. You even hired men to humiliate her. Nova song, you love scheming so much, how about I let you experience it for yourself? Nova paled, dropping to her knees and begging like a dog. No. Please, Milo, don't do this to me. I'm carrying your child. I'm your legal wife. You promised to take care of me for the rest of my life. Her pleas stirred no mercy in him. Every time Milo closed his eyes, he saw Ophelia's tragic figure in the interrogation room. You don't deserve it. Nova song, you don't deserve anything. He called the same thugs, slamming the door shut as Nova stared at him in despair. Leo hid in his room, trembling as he heard his mother's screams. He didn't dare go out, didn't dare stand up for her. Though he didn't understand why his father, no, his uncle, had suddenly gone mad, he knew he'd bullied Ophelia too. He was terrified that his uncle's revenge would turn on him next. Leo curled up in the corner, a sudden longing for Ophelia washing over him. If she hadn't left, she would have held him in her arms and comforted him softly, wouldn't she? She'd said she'd treat him like her own child. It was his mother who'd always said Auntie Ophelia was standing in the way of their family. But now he realized he'd had his own father. It was they who'd forced their way into Auntie Ophelia's home. He regretted it. If he'd known things would turn out like this, why had he listened to his mother and driven away Ophelia, who'd cared for him so much? He truly regretted it. 2 years later, an elegant figure appeared at the entrance of the provincial TV station. Stepping back onto her homeland, Ophelia felt a surge of emotion. In 2 years she'd earned a master's degree from one of the world's top universities. Returning to China just as favorable policies were implemented, she'd been recruited by CCTV to host programs promoting reform and opening up. Gone was the haggard housewife who'd sacrificed everything for the Qin family. Now she was known as Host Sheng, admired by many. The painful memories had faded for the most part. And this place hadn't brought her only suffering. People like Director Lee, who'd been both a mentor and a mother figure to her, had stayed in touch with her all these years. Today was Director Lee's 60th birthday. Ophelia had rushed back specially to pick her up from work. The moment Director Lee saw her, a bright smile spread across her face. "Ophelia. You're finally back." Ophelia smiled too. "Yes, I'm back, Director." The two walked home arm in arm. Along the way, Director Lee couldn't help but boast about Ophelia to everyone they met. "That's my protégée. She's working at CCTV now. She's amazing, speaks fluent foreign languages. You'll all see her on TV soon." Ophelia felt a little embarrassed, but she knew Director Lee's nature. She let herself be praised all the way home, and even after they arrived, the compliments didn't stop. She felt a little dazed, but her smile never faded. When Milo heard neighbors talking about Director Lee's star pupil returning, he rushed over immediately. Breathless, he sat in his wheelchair, staring at Ophelia greedily. He hadn't seen her in 2 years, hadn't heard a single word about her. He'd known Ophelia wouldn't cut ties with Director Lee, but every time he'd come looking for her, he'd been met only with scolding and contempt. He'd missed her so much. Milo didn't blink, as if trying to engrave her face into his memory. His eyes were filled with admiration. He'd always known Ophelia was beautiful. Otherwise, she never would have become the provincial TV station's star host. But after 2 years, she seemed even more stunning, a vibrant, alive kind of beauty. Feeling his intense gaze, Ophelia turned around. When she saw Milo in his wheelchair, her smile vanished instantly. Without her daily care for all those years, Milo looked haggard. His beard was unshaven, a stubbly gray shadow covering his chin. He was as thin as a stick, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. Clearly, life hadn't been kind to Milo Chin. But Ophelia didn't care about this man who had nothing to do with her anymore. She continued to help Director Lee greet guests, ignoring Milo completely. Milo's heart ached as she paid him no mind. He wheeled himself closer cautiously. "Ophelia." When Director Lee heard his voice, her face darkened. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome." She moved to close the door, trying to block him out. But Milo only stared at Ophelia stubbornly, his eyes filled with obvious longing for her to return to him, to tell him she'd missed him too. But the woman he'd cherished so deeply didn't even glance his way. "Director, don't waste your anger on irrelevant people," Ophelia said gently, closing the door casually as Milo watched, his heart breaking. To her, Milo Chin truly meant nothing at all. Director Lee looked at her with satisfaction. "It seems you really don't care about those people anymore." Ophelia nodded. Whether it was hatred or love, those intense emotions had only drained her. Milo Chin wasn't worth wasting another moment on. Director Lee smiled, her protégé had finally grown up. After celebrating Director Lee's birthday, Ophelia prepared to leave. When she opened the door, she found Milo still waiting outside. It was dark and he was shivering in his thin clothes. Seeing her come out, Milo rushed over. "Ophelia. You're finally out. I missed you so much." This time there was no hesitation. His eyes red with tears, he rambled on about how much he'd missed Ophelia over the years. "It's my fault. I never knew what you went through back then, how you were almost. But I didn't hire those men. It was that shameless bitch Nova Song, using my name to deliberately hurt you. I've cut ties with Nova and Leo. Will you forgive me? Come home with me, please." Once Ophelia had thought Milo's silence was cold. Now his endless chatter only annoyed her. "Milo Chin, let me guess, after I left, you finally realized you can't live without me?" Milo nodded frantically, his eyes overflowing with unmasked love. "Yes, Ophelia. I can't live without you. I've always loved only you. It's all Nova's fault. If she hadn't inserted herself between us, you never would have been forced to leave." Ophelia found it ridiculous and she laughed out loud. Seeing her smile, Milo let out a sigh of relief. He thought she'd forgiven him. "I knew it. You love me so much, Ophelia, you'd never abandon me. Let's go home. We can start over, just the two of us, no Nova, no Leo. Please." Ophelia fought back her anger but finally snapped, slapping Milo hard across the face. Milo clutched his cheek, staring at her in disbelief. He wanted to ask why she'd hit him, but when he met her emotionless eyes, the words died in his throat. His heart trembled, fearing the answer he most dreaded. But Ophelia didn't care about his feelings. Milo Chin, I can't believe after 2 years, you're still this disgusting. You say Nova inserted herself between us. Did she hold a gun to your head and force you to sleep with her? Force you to marry her and have her child? What makes you think I, Ophelia Shing, would want a dirty lying man who used me, took me for granted and betrayed me? I'll never go back to the Chin family. Milo had no response to her accusations. He knew better than anyone how terribly he'd wronged her. He'd betrayed her, leaving the woman who'd loved him wholeheartedly broken and bruised. Even if Nova had schemed maliciously, hadn't he been blind and foolish to fall for it? But he couldn't let her go. Milo insisted, I know you're still angry, Ophelia. Let me court you again, please. Terrified of hearing her refuse, he turned and fled before she could answer. Watching his hasty retreat, Ophelia could only roll her eyes. She hadn't even had a chance to tell him she was married. Court her again? As if Ophelia brushed it off. Her husband would be coming to pick her up in a few days anyway. But she never expected Milo to find out where she lived. Every day he waited downstairs with a bouquet of roses. When curious passers-by asked, he'd say he was trying to win back his angry wife. Soon, everyone was shooting Ophelia knowing looks, unaware of the bitter history between her and Milo, assuming they were just a bickering couple. Ophelia couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing Milo waiting foolishly downstairs again, she marched over. Milo's eyes lit up instantly. Ophelia, these roses are for you. Ophelia didn't take them. Instead she slapped him hard. Crack. The onlookers gasped, wincing at the sound. They were about to urge Ophelia to go easier on him to spare his dignity when she spoke up. Milo Chin, are you sick of yourself? Will you stop harassing me? Hurt flashed in Milo's eyes. Ophelia, I just want you to forgive me and come home. Ophelia laughed angrily. Come home? To be your maid again? Aren't you the one who was so happy with your fake marriage certificate, sleeping with your sister-in-law? Aren't you the two who fooled around while I was in the hospital, right next door to my room? Oh, and by the way, does your sister-in-law know your wife know you're here chasing me every day? I'm sorry, Milo Chin, but I have no interest in meddling in other people's marriages, especially military marriages. Milo's face paled inch by inch. The passers-by who'd been about to defend him were shocked. Wow, what a shameless man. I thought he was being romantic, trying to win back his wife. Turns out he tricked her with a fake marriage certificate. Not just that. Did you hear? He slept with his sister-in-law. If I were his brother, I'd beat him to a pulp. Disgusting. Lucky for him, times have changed, otherwise he'd be publicly denounced for this. Milo listened to the insults, his smile more painful than tears. Ophelia, you're misunderstanding me. I divorced Nova the year you left. I'm clean now. Truly. He knelt heavily on the ground with a thud. Please forgive me. His humble plea sparked mixed reactions from the crowd. Wow, a man's pride means nothing to him, he must really regret it. He looks familiar. Isn't he Colonel Chin, the war hero who got injured on duty a few years ago? Miss, why not give him another chance? He's a hero. Yeah, he just made a mistake. Hearing the crowd take his side, Milo felt a glimmer of hope. He carefully pulled a small box from his pocket, holding it out to Ophelia like a treasure. Inside was a translucent jade bracelet, obviously priceless. On his pension as a disabled veteran, it must have taken him years to save up for something so valuable. Ophelia, I broke your bracelet back then. This is for you as compensation. Milo omitted the fact that the original bracelet had been her mother's heirloom. Unaware of the whole story, the crowd wavered. Miss, take it. That bracelet must cost a fortune. He was foolish before, but he's truly repenting now. He's a good man. Ophelia found herself trapped by their expectations. Frowning, she was about to clarify, when a large hand suddenly reached out from beside her, swatting the box from Milo's hand. The jade bracelet shattered into pieces on the ground. Milo glared furiously at the stranger. Who are you? Why did you break the bracelet I gave Ophelia? Do you know how much it cost? What angered him even more was seeing Ophelia smile at this man, a smile she'd once reserved only for him. Jealousy surged through Milo. He threw a punch at the man, but he was no longer the heroic Colonel Chin of old. The punch didn't even graze the man's sleeve. Milo Chin, right? Didn't you bother to ask around before chasing someone? Ophelia is married to me. Orion's face was cold as he took Ophelia's hand, showing their wedding rings to Milo. Milo stared dumbly at the large diamond ring on Ophelia's slender white finger. How had he missed that? But he shook his head, refusing to accept reality. No. She loves me so much she wouldn't marry someone else after just 2 years. Ophelia, are you just trying to make me jealous? Don't worry, I won't be angry. As long as you come back to me, I don't care about this. As he spoke, he tried to reach for Ophelia's hand. But Orion would never let him get close to her. The two men began to fight. Orion was healthy and well exercised with a strong build. Milo, who'd spent the past 2 years drinking heavily, was in poor shape. He was quickly pinned to the ground and beaten. As the punches landed, he looked to Ophelia for help, hoping she'd feel sorry for him and stop the fight. But she didn't. She even stepped back as if afraid the dust would stain her clothes. Milo's strength drained away. He lay on the ground like a dead dog. Orion stopped, looking confused. I didn't even hit him that hard. Why is he crying? Ophelia finally glanced at Milo. The once dignified Milo-chin, who'd kept his composure even on his deathbed, was crying in public after being beaten? Or maybe he wasn't crying from the beating. But Ophelia didn't care. She just took Orion's hand, carefully checking him for injuries. Orion was the senior who'd studied abroad with her. Back then, when she was severely injured, Orion had stayed by her side day and night, taking meticulous care of her. When she struggled with acclimatization, he'd woken up 2 hours early every day to cook her hometown dishes. She'd never told him her favorite foods, yet he'd observed and remembered them all. If Milo, who'd pursued her so passionately, was a strong shot of baijiu, Orion was a glass of warm water. No fancy words, no grand public gestures, but he'd made her feel it deeply. He loved her. And she didn't resist. After 2 years of studying abroad, they'd naturally fallen in love. The first thing they did upon returning to China was rush to get married. Ophelia later learned that Orion had liked her since their student days. But after graduation they'd moved to different cities. Orion had signed with CCTV and been swamped with work, missing his chance with her by just a step, losing out to Milo. He'd locked his feelings away until he saw her name on the study abroad list, realized she was unhappy and wrapped her in his gentle care. Milo-chin, our lives are busy and fulfilling. I don't have time to play games with you. I'm married to Orion. The certificate is real and I love him deeply. Chapter 19. With those words, Ophelia linked arms with Orion and walked away, never glancing back at Milo. Milo vanished from her life completely. Ophelia was content. She and Orion both joined CCTV, becoming the most famous couple hosts on television. Everyone knew they were the most talented and dedicated pair of hosts. Orion never held her back. Instead, he stood right beside her, supporting her career. 2 years later, Ophelia got pregnant and gave birth to a daughter. Orion immediately announced his resignation to focus on his family. Everyone said Ophelia was blessed for 8 lifetimes to find such a good husband. Only Orion said, I'm the lucky one to have won Ophelia's heart. I don't want to risk losing her to someone else. Ophelia smiled happily. Later she took her daughter back to her hometown to visit Director Lee. While shopping, a dirty little beggar suddenly handed her a flower. Ophelia thought the boy looked familiar. She was about to ask him something when he ran away as fast as he could. The little beggar was Leo-chin. On the day Milo had flown into a rage, Leo had hidden, too scared to come out even as he heard his mother's screams. But he'd still been driven away, along with Nova, who'd been forced to sign a divorce agreement by Milo and had lost her sanity from the trauma. Milo had found them a place to live and never appeared again. Leo often heard Nova muttering curses, cursing Ophelia, cursing Milo, cursing the unborn child they'd lost. Even he and his late father weren't spared. Her eyes grew darker and darker and she began hitting him constantly. It's all your fault. If I didn't have you as a burden, I'd never be in this mess. Why don't you die like your useless father? She beat and scolded him relentlessly. Leo felt both pity and hatred for her, pity for her shattered mind tied to the bed with ropes. Hatred for her refusal to admit that her own greed and scheming had ruined their lives. Many times, remembering the delicious meals Ophelia had cooked for him, Leo wished he were dead. Until a few days ago he'd had a vivid dream. In the dream he and Nova hadn't been driven away. They'd kept Ophelia in the dark, manipulating her into waiting on Nova, waiting on Milo. Even taking care of Leo's own children after he got married. But in the end she discovered the lie they'd hidden for 50 years. Leo had watched helplessly as he'd spoken cruel words to her, watched as a truck hit Ophelia, leaving her broken and bloodied. Waking up from that dream where he'd inherited all the Chin family's wealth, Leo looked around their leaky, drafty hut. Suddenly he remembered the story Ophelia had told him long ago, the farmer and the snake. Ophelia had been the kind farmer and he and his mother had been the ungrateful snake. Seeing Ophelia holding her daughter, smiling happily, Leo had wanted to give her that flower, a flower he'd bought with money from collecting scrap for days, even though he knew he'd be beaten by Nova when he got back. He'd wanted to apologize for the ignorant, vicious boy he'd once been. But when he ran home he found Nova gone. The ropes binding her had been worn through. She'd left him only a note, "It's all Milo's fault. He lied to me. He should have taken care of us for the rest of our lives." Leo's breath caught. He rushed to the Chin family home, a place he hadn't visited in years. The house was surrounded by people. He saw Nova, wild with madness, being held to the ground, shouting, "He's the shameless one. Why is he blaming everything on me? He was the one who suggested lying to Ophelia. Why did he cast me out? Why won't he take care of Leo and me anymore? My baby. Give me back my baby." Not far away there was a blood-stained knife and Milo lying on the ground, covered in blood. Leo was terrified, but he forced himself to move closer to Milo. The uncle who'd once been as imposing as his father was now gray-haired and emaciated, barely a shadow of his former self. He was dying. When he saw Leo, tears fell from his eyes. "Leo. I deserve this. I wronged her for 50 years. I deserve to die for her. The Chin family's property. Please. Give it to her. Tell her. It's my compensation." Leo suddenly understood. He wasn't the only one who'd had that dream. But he shook his head, refusing his uncle's last wish. He thought Ophelia would never want to be tied to the Chin family again. She was such a clean, pure person. She'd find them all too dirty.